Hey, good morning and welcome to Breakthrough Walls. I'm Ken Walls and I'm your host. And today I have someone very, very special with me. Her name is Elaine Mingus, and I recently met her at a Tony Caruso event and found out that she is Mrs. Austin. I think that's the official title. If it isn't, she'll correct me. But I am so excited to have Elaine on here today. She is absolutely amazing. I'm excited to hear her story, and I'm excited for you to hear her story. So do me a favor, share this out. If you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, it doesn't matter where you are, share this out. Let's get as many people on here watching as we can because this lady is amazing and I want you to hear her story and share it with everyone you know. So we'll see you in just a second with Elaine Mingus. Okay, we're back. Let me bring Elaine on. Elaine, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ken. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you here. I'm great. And over on Instagram, we have Sonia Empower watching. Love Sonia. She's amazing. So somebody that you know, I believe. So Elaine, I like to, start with, I, I, I re- here's what this show is about. It's about how you've hit the hard times in life and somehow figured out a way to get through those walls, around them, over them, under them, whatever, and succeed anyway. So that's what this is about. Why don't you start with telling everybody where you were born and raised?
I was born in Houston, Texas, and raised in a small town outside of Houston called Sealy, Texas.
Sealy, Texas. You don't have a deep Southern Texas accent.
I don't know why I don't have that, but neither did my parents. So I'm guessing that's probably why.
That would be why, I'll bet. Yeah. So that is so for everybody that's not in Texas, I'm in North Texas. So that Houston area is actually the coldest part of the entire United States. I'm kidding. It is so hot there. Oh my
Hot and
gosh.
humid. Yeah, for
The
sure.
humidity is crazy down there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what was it like growing up for you down there as a kid?
So we were in Houston from when I was born until I was 10 years old. And my dad made the decision to move us to a small Texas town to get away from all the dangers of big city living. But what he didn't realize is that is exactly what I got into in small town living. So,
Oh,
but it was me just growing up. My dad was a businessman, still is. And my mom was a stay at home mom for the most part and just kind of lived a very typical American family life. There was me and my sister, two kids. We were fairly well off. And so just kind of didn't have much to worry about as I was growing up. And then I'll get into my story later about how that all changed.
yeah. So, you were what, maybe 10, you said, when you moved and switched schools and all of that, which means you switch friends, and that can be interesting and fun, I guess, as a kid. But so what? I mean, how did it go going from there? I mean, how did you ended up in the smaller town? Houston's huge, by the way. For
Houston is big.
for
Yeah,
every, it's like what, the fifth largest, I think, in the country, or
it
something
is
like
really,
this.
really big. I'm in
It's
Austin and
huge.
it's a small town compared to Houston.
Yeah, right, right. Um, so when you moved to look, we have NFL players watching right now. Jackson Crisp, how you doing, brother? So um, when you moved, how was that transition for you as a kid?
So I think 10 years old is a great time for a family to move because you are still kind of in the place where you have park friends and, just
Yeah.
anybody can be your friend. So I made friends fairly easily. Everything was amazing. We started going to a small town Baptist church in Sealy and got very, very involved with the youth group there. And when we were, we would go play volleyball after church. There was movie night. So I got integrated into that community pretty quickly. And
Yeah.
then, that's when through the church is where a lot of my trauma started.
Oh, okay. Are we going to talk about that?
Yeah, we absolutely can.
So,
got to warm up the audience to be prepared
yeah.
for a lot of triggers.
Well, so, listen, I think that, and you and I have had conversations. I mean, we all go through things in life, and I truly believe that there's always a person, place, event, string of events that occur as children that kind of push us in the direction that we end up going as adults. So I think it's an important part of our journey, a really important part of our journey. So talk about what happened, as much as you can, and yeah, tell everybody. I mean, I mean, here you look like the picture perfect person that would never have anything go wrong.
Yes, well, looks definitely can be deceiving. So when we moved to Sealy, like I said, I got involved in the church and was, just a normal kid. I was watching Muppet Babies, I think Beetlejuice is coming out soon. And Beetlejuice came out around that same time
Yeah.
and just, was enjoying life. And then, suddenly had caught the eye of the assistant youth pastor at the church. And what I now know is called grooming. He just started kind of paying attention to me. Of course, you're that awkward age of 11, 12, 13, just trying to figure out who you are. I have a 13-year-old, and let me tell you, I have 7 kids, and
Mm,
my older ones, like, give me a teenager, 14, 15 up any day. Middle school is like that age where you're just like, they are trying so hard to differentiate themselves from you as a parent, society, trying to make themselves in the world. And so it was just at that very pivotal time that he
yeah.
kind of played upon some insecurities, namely that me and my dad, as most daughters and dads during that time, were going through a difficult period. I was being, rebellious, and as much as a 11, 12-year-old can be rebellious. And,
Yeah.
that relationship was strained. And so he would drive me around after he dropped everybody off from the volleyball game or the movie night, or we watched the Rockets were winning the NBA like World Series or whatever it's called, like multiple years in a row. So that was a really big thing that we did, was always watch basketball. And he would drop me off last, and he would say, kind of tell me like, "Oh, it's so sad."
And just for the record, the World Series is baseball.
Baseball, babe. World, I don't know. It was something very big in the NBA. I remember really watching. I really liked basketball back then, but I don't know. After that, after the Houston
Yeah.
Rockets, it was like Elijah Wan and like all the best that I remember.
Yeah.
And
Right.
yeah, I'm not a
I'm
sports
just
person.
playing. I'm just playing with you. That was
And
funny
but
though.
through that, he kind of was just like, "I'm so sorry, that you aren't experiencing that loving father relationship that you want right now," and kind of positioned himself into that place. And I recently read my journal entry of that time period because I found it when I was cleaning up, that what I remember it happening very slowly, very like, like a method. It happened with really quick. I mean, when he started coming after me, he went in for the kill and got into, a sexual relationship with this man I was 13 at the time.
Oh my
And
god.
would not, I mean, like I said, I was watching Muppet Babies. I was interested in, becoming a cheerleader. I had no clue about, I mean, I knew what sex was, but I wasn't, it wasn't part of my repertoire. And so he kind of exploited that innocence and that need for affection at a very pivotal point in my time in my life. And
Wow.
didn't realize that he was doing it to multiple different girls within our youth group. And 10 years later, after this all happened, he was finally convicted of his first offense. And now his picture is up on the Predator database online. And my dad finally figured out what was going on. And, you know, as a parent, I know how hard that must have been for him, but as a little girl, like, he didn't respond the way that I needed him to respond. He didn't respond with, "I can't believe I didn't protect you. I'm so sorry," and, slug this grown man. He put a lot of blame on me, and so that
Oh,
a lot of that blame. And then my mom
wow.
decided to take me to the church and confront the lead pastor. And we walked into the church. I was, of course, very embarrassed, very crushed. And because I thought this guy loved me, I thought that he was, somebody that, I had a relationship with. And I walked into the church and the pastor said, "We know what's happened. We believe that she seduced him." And I remember just sitting there and my mom was appalled. I was like, your understanding at that level is so limited. I thought, I mean, did I? I mean, it wasn't like, you see in the movies where it was violent rape or anything like that. It was, you know, consensual. And actually my therapist was just like, "Elaine, you've got to stop using that word consensual." It was, you had no ability to consent during that time. And
Wow.
a lot of that blame on myself. And what happened going forward was just a series of destructive events that, you know, was indicative of the blame that I was putting on myself and that the society had put on me.
Wow. I have a 13-year-old daughter that I'm gonna have to end this interview and go get her out of school right now.
Yeah,
Holy
give her a
crap.
big hug. I know. It's
I think about that stuff, and my wife and I both are very alert and protective in that way. Um, I can't even imagine because I would be in prison. Because he would be
He'd be done.
expired.
Yeah, he'd be 6 feet under for sure.
I mean, I would be in prison. Like, hey, so I cannot imagine. And for you at that age, um, wow,
Yeah, it
that's
was really
tough.
intense.
Yeah, that's
And so
tough.
from there, my experience was, trying to assimilate back into normal life, hiding any evidence of what happened and just removing myself. Of course, my entire family removed ourselves from that church.
Wow.
And which just was kind of the pinpoint place of the disintegration of our family. We were, very involved in the church. We still remained believers, and I knew that it was not God that had that happen. It was, fallenness of man. And so luckily I
Yeah.
made that distinction early on, because if I hadn't, that might have been a little, my story might be a little bit different. But after that, I remember sitting and watching, it was of course the 90s, Kate Moss, that wayfish thin, twiggy thin was really, really in. I'm, kind of a chubby little girl and, just awkward little girl at 13 and eating. And I remember thinking, here's this, commercial of Kate Moss coming on Calvin Klein, little black underwear with a white band that said Calvin Klein. And, which is interesting because that whole series, if you look back on it, had very much the vibe of Predator and, kind of that pedophilia vibe during that time. Of course, we were,
Yeah.
in the 90s, it was a different era. We kind of just accepted everything. And
Yeah.
I decided at that point that I would take my weight into my own hands, and it became that was the first day that I decided to start becoming bulimic and made myself, throw up. And that led down as, an 8-year journey with bulimia that just, wrecked my insides. And got down to that wayfishly thin that I wanted, close to 100 pounds. Everyone was worried. But one of the biggest things that was in my benefit that I was able to hide behind was the fact that I was very, very bright. And I was able to, I graduated high school in 3 years with National Honor Society, top of my class. And partly just because I wanted to get out of that city, that little town so bad. And I
Yeah.
lettered in track my freshman year. From all intents and purposes, like from the outside, I was successful and, beautiful and had tons of friends and, everything was okay. And, had a boyfriend that, eventually when I was in high school, got a boyfriend that was my serious boyfriend. And, but what they didn't know is that from the inside, I was crumbling. And, that led into the boyfriend that I was talking about was a drug dealer. And we, just slowly just introduced, I'd already been drinking and smoking and just started introducing drugs into my life slowly. And so whatever
Mm.
he was selling at the time, we were doing, it was, LSD, cocaine, pot,
And this
just
is in
pot
high
drinking.
school still.
Yeah. So I'm 14, 15, 16 at this point. And,
Mm.
every night is a party.
Wow.
I'm not eating very much, or I'm eating a lot, but then I'm, engaging in bulimic activity. And, so it was really hard. And at some point in my life, um, I don't actually talk about this a lot. I got pregnant and miscarried. I think partly because my body could not probably do that.
Yeah.
But um, I remember that being kind of a place where it was hard for me because my boyfriend knew at the time, and it was a very difficult time. And I was a writer. I wrote lots of poetry, and just wanted to be a famous writer. But and so when I graduated from high school and I went into UT and got a degree in journalism, I also wanted to be Connie Chung and be on the news. And so I, just tried my best to do, keep going with my life, even though all these things had happened to me. And the
Wow.
problem is that at some point you can't keep going. You either have to deal with the issue or not. And
Yeah.
during that time in Austin, when I came to University of Texas, I met somebody who was also, a drug dealer and started getting into even harder drugs. So at that point, we were shooting up cocaine, shooting up heroin,
Gee.
doing, just whatever we could get our hands on again, and trying to maintain that, going to school. And at some point, I dropped out of college or didn't really drop out, just didn't tell anybody, just stopped going. So
Right.
which doesn't, if you're going to drop out, like tell people, because what
Right.
happened was
Right.
my grade, I got a D. And so when I went back to college, I came into college with a 0.26 grade point average. If I had
Nice.
dropped out, I just would have not had a grade. But I
Right.
came in from, at the very bottom, and it's way easier to maintain a 4.0 because you start out, everybody starts out at a
Yeah.
4.0, way harder to
Right.
work up from the 0.26. So,
Right.
um,
Did you do it though?
I did.
I knew you
So
did.
the rest of the story actually gets a little bit better. And because I had always wanted to be a writer, I had started writing this book based on some stuff that I'd learned in church, which was kind of like Jesus is coming back, apocalyptic. It was I watched what was it called? A Thief in the Night, which was like a 1970s chicka chicka wow wow version of Jesus coming back. And,
Yeah.
so old and just awful and wonderful all at the same time because of its like B Christian film in the 70s. And so I was writing a book, and the craziest the craziest thing started happening is every time I'd write something in the book, it would kind of like, in a sense, kind of happen. And I was like, this is really, really bizarre. Like, I don't know what is going on. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go get a Bible from a church because, they have to give me, I don't want to spend my own money. I want to go get a free Bible, and they have to give me a free Bible. And
Right.
so I, that morning dropped a hit of X. I think went and wrote some sort of manifesto in my journal, had a cup of coffee, and decided to go riding around and find a church that would give me a Bible. And so let me just paint you a picture of what my attire was, just because, fashion and all that comes into play later on in my life. I was wearing a giant black tutu with a leather bodice. I had fashioned like a veil over my face, and I had blood red lipstick on. So I walk into the church looking like the bride of Satan, demanding a
I
Bible.
was gonna say that. Like, what? Wow.
Yeah, it was an intense moment, I'm sure, for those two little ladies sitting there it's a Redeemer Lutheran church over on
Oh
Lamar
my
and
gosh.
Anderson Lane area in Austin. And I'm sure they were like, I don't know what just walked in. And so
Right.
I was like, I just want a Bible. I'm a nice person. I'm not trying to freak them out, but I
Right.
didn't realize
Right.
what I looked like. I thought I was just being hip and fashionable, I guess, at that point. And so they go back in the back together, because I'm sure they were like, I am not leaving you alone with this girl.
Right. Yeah.
And they,
Probably
came.
grabbed a revolver while they were
Yeah,
back
or
there,
I mean,
just in
I'm
case.
thinking maybe they were like, let's pray. We got to pray this demon away.
Get that bottle of holy water. Let's throw it on her.
Yeah, exactly. The power of Christ compels you.
Oh
And
my gosh.
but during those moments, I turned, and there was these beautiful doors, and leading to the chapel. And so I kind of like grab them and I shake them, and it's locked. And I remember thinking, somebody told me that, like, at a Baptist church, because I grew up Baptist, we don't ever lock the doors, because God should never be locked off. And so I was just like, this is so like sacrilegious. I can't believe they locked the doors to go to the chapel. I was like kind of offended. And they walk back in and they hand me a Bible, and I just kind of I'm like, I need to get in the church, guys. And they're like, what do you need? Like, we do not need any seances today in the chapel. Like, what are you going to do
Right.
in the church? And I just, from
Right.
like the inside of who I was like, I need to pray right now. And so they were like, all right, like, we're not going to keep Satan away from God. But so they open
Right.
up the church doors, and in this particular chapel was a beautiful crucifix of Jesus carved out of wood, hanging from the altar.
Mm.
And I just remember, so the moment that I was there, it's similar to the second verse of Amazing Grace. It says, at the very moment that I knew I had sinned, that my sins were revealed, I knew they had been relieved. Because at the same time that I knew, gosh, I have not been living right. I have, and I believe sin and absolute truth and all this, but I like to call sin coping mechanisms, because it's just
Mm.
broken people doing broken things because we don't know what else to do. But at that point, I knew I was not living according to what I knew was right. And at the
Wow.
very same time, I knew I absolutely had nothing to worry about, because here is this beautiful Savior that came down and washed it all away. And I never had to worry about it again. And I knew I was home. And that moment was just, it was, the Bible says, those that are in a great darkness will see a great light. And it was like a light switch had been flipped on, and everything that I had been wondering, I had been doubting, I had been asking, that I didn't even know that my soul was crying out, it was answered in a single moment. And so I spent the
Wow.
rest of the time just crying and praying and asking for I'm already forgiven, but asking for forgiveness, and
Yeah.
just knowing that, like, this is the moment. And from that moment on, I just never was the same. And I've been living a living testimony of that moment, even until this day, into what I'm doing now.
Wow. Are you sure that ecstasy didn't have anything to do with the
I don't know.
Okay.
It was interesting though, because I mean, I don't want a bad hit of X, but because that's like the worst thing in the world, is like, you don't want a bad hit, but like that
I don't even
drug,
know what that
it
is.
didn't even it didn't even like seem to take cold because I remember waiting and waiting and waiting to see this drug that I take and was going to like take back. And I just never really to, I don't know if it was a bad hit or what, because completely was trying to talk to this person at this coffee shop from my house. And I was like, have you met Jesus? And they were like, I mean, I'm like, the first thing I do is like start evangelizing. Like I have no training. I'm just like, do you know Jesus? And they're like, girl, we don't need your religion. I mean, this is Austin. Like, we don't need that like Jesus stuff here. Like, can you just take your latte and go? And I'm
Right.
like, no, man, like not that Jesus, not like the one that started war, the religion that, all that,
Yeah.
like this one that like met me exactly when I needed to be met. Have you met him? And they were like,
Wow.
nah, good, like just go. And so I like ended up spending about 2 hours on a hillside with this homeless guy and just talking to him about Jesus. And he was like, girl, Jesus shows up every day in my life. Like I don't know how I make it each day, but God takes care of me every single day. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I know you're talking about this person who meets you right where you are.
Wow. By the way, your signal cut out there for a little bit. You got
Oh,
really choppy. I don't know if there's problem. Maybe in
I
the
hope
area
not.
there's an internet issue or something, but
To
I
me it
heard
says
I
it has full bars on my side, but I don't know, maybe not.
oh, okay. Well, maybe it was my side. I don't know. But so I love your story. My wife is on here. She said amazing story as well. So at that moment, um, and I can relate to it. But at that moment when we'll just call it what it is, you finally surrendered and and allowed God to shine a light for you to start following. And well, it was always there, you just didn't see it
Yeah.
maybe. But so where did things I mean, here you are, your words not mine, you go into this church as dressed as the bride of Satan. and and but things started shifting for you. Talk about how that the shift occurred and how things started going for you. Because look, I think that number one, I'm shocked that you can talk about the things that occurred without a lot of emotion coming out. But maybe you've just talked about it so much that it doesn't affect you that way anymore. But you know how did things start to shift and that after that moment in the Lutheran church, right?
Yeah. So you're right. It those things that happened to me had to come out at some point, and I have definitely worked
Yeah.
through a lot of it. But when I what you don't realize is the moment you start doing stop doing drugs, you have dopamine receptors, you have serotonin that is all of a sudden going, wait, what are we doing? And so what had because I was doing heroin, which makes you vomit, insanely because that's just what it does. I had kind of stopped being, as active in my eating disorder. So when I stopped the drugs, my eating disorder actually came back with a vengeance. And that's what really led me to go continue down the path of therapy and getting help.
Mm,
And that was a really awful time, a beautiful time because I was growing and I was learning so much. And the light had finally turned on for me, but also an awful time because now I'm having to deal with the fallout of all this stuff that had happened to me. And, I'm going to church and I'm praising God and I'm reading my Bible and going home from church and engaging in eating disorder that I know is counter to who I'm supposed to be and is
right.
destructive. And so, after a while, my mom was like, you've got to get into a therapy. I wanted to go into like like I'm an all in type of girl. And so I wanted to go into this like inpatient therapy. And she was like, no, Elaine, you've got to deal with real life. Like you've got to figure out how to
Right.
deal with it on
Right.
an everyday basis. And so I went into a eating disorder clinic called La Que Saba, and it's no longer in the works. It's no longer there, but the person that developed it is, and she does cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's just reintroducing food into your life in a way that shows you, first of all, your body was fearfully and wonderfully made. It knows exactly what to do with the ingredients that you're putting into it, and it
Yeah.
deserves nourishment. And so relearning how to nourish myself and to love myself and
Right.
believe that I was worth taking up space, and I think that's one of the things that victims of abuse think they have to be really, they get like, part of it's like shrinking down really, really small. How can I get as small as possible so that I don't take up space, because I don't want people to notice me. I don't want to be a burden. There's all
Right.
sorts of things that go into our head that we're trying to escape from.
Yeah.
And so learning how to show up bigger was part of my, it's constantly part of my journey. And after I remember I walked in to the disorder clinic, I signed the papers, and from that moment on, I never engaged in that eating disorder again. And it was
Wow.
healing from that moment on. And I remember walking down the steps at UT after, it was like a little bit after lunch, like lunch was upon us, and I was like, I want to eat, and I thought, oh, I haven't thought about what I ate breakfast since I finished the last bite. And that's when I really knew that I was free, that I had never, 'cause usually, and in my, as somebody who has an eating disorder, you're calculating calories, you're trying to like shift food. Like maybe it's like, you're trying to like minimize the amount of food you ate. And so I hadn't done that all day. And I was just like, whoa, like things are shifting in my life. And I continued on with my life. I, still, wanted to be like, I wanted to be healthy. So I remember praying, God, can you bring me a team sport? I like to do something fun. And I was rollerblading at the time. And I overhear at this coffee shop, these girls talking about roller derby. And I was like, oh, that sounds right up my alley. Like, let's beat people down on roller skates.
Oh my
And I
God.
didn't know what roller derby was at the time. I just knew they were talking about roller skating, and they were like, well, show her for tryouts. And so what I didn't know is that it was Austin's first roller derby league ever since the
Wow.
70s, when roller derby was popular. It was called Bad Girl, Good Woman, and which literally is probably every single, like I identified with that completely, and became a jammer. My name was Lady Hawk, and because I was one of my favorite shows growing up. And
Wow.
so that yeah, that was a fun, interesting, especially as a Christian, because I'm learning about, about Jesus, and then on the other side, I'm wearing like fishnet hose and punching people out and doing all sorts of insane things. So
You're first off, I've met you in real life, and you're like this tiny little woman that like I can't see that, like you're not intimidating. I'm sorry, but you're not. I'm like, what? I can't even picture that, Elaine. That's crazy.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
uh,
I like to call myself, I'm not short, I'm not small, I'm concentrated.
yeah,
I'm like,
right,
I'm the
right,
full strength thing. You just don't realize it's like getting
right.
a good concentrated Tide thing. You're like, don't use
Well,
it all.
to
Or
to be the mother of 7 children, you're definitely strong. So,
yeah.
but so uh, at some point along the way, and I don't have we gotten to the part where you met your husband and started having this basketball team?
No, no, I could jump to there. Yeah. So I did. So I met my husband through a church internship. We were both doing videography, or I was doing journalism in communications. He was in the College of Communications, but in RTF. And so we met through an internship,
Okay.
and he was just like, I want to talk to that girl. I just thought he was really, really interesting and had, dreams of shooting documentaries. And I was like, oh, okay, well, cool. Like, let's be friends. He like got my email, started emailing me. I was like, oh yeah, you're a nice guy, like for somebody else. And eventually he just won my heart over. He's just the most authentic person. I am so blessed that the type of person that I would have probably chosen isn't the type of person I got, because this guy puts up with so much. He's so calm. He ground. If I'm like way up in the air all the time, he's always like making sure that I've got my, some sort of security and feet on the ground. And so I
That's
appreciate him so
awesome.
much. But yeah, we immediately started having kids. That was not on by choice. That was a total like, okay, we're pregnant. And then we did plan two of them, the second girl, which is number two, and the second boy, which is number seven, because the first one, of course, needs a sister, and then the only boy we have, needs a brother. And so luckily we got at least a brother for him at the end. But I just kept, we'd be like, oh, we're good, we're done with, we had two. Oh, we're pregnant with three. Okay, we're done with three. Oh, we're four. No, we're done. Nope, nope, five, and then six, and then we planned seven. And that was that was that's a whole journey, because that, I didn't realize. I grew up, of course, very wealthy, and my dad was a businessman, and my husband had a different upbringing. His dad was a heroin addict, and mom, was just a hippie, and doing the hippie thing, like, she's got her ashwanda and all the herbs and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And
Wow.
so that right there, on top of having kids, was a real hard wake up call. And I'm one that I'm really grateful to have gone through. Of course, I wouldn't have chosen that, but it made
Right.
me really realize how hard the working population is working. And it's not laziness. It's not like, oh, they just, it's the fact that when you have a leg up and you're born second generation business person, second generation, wealth, you can't even understand how hard the working population is working. And I remember I was pregnant with my fourth, and at this point I'm on WIC and Medicaid and all the Cades, and pull out my WIC card and my Lone Star card, which I'm glad that it was cards, because it used to be like this long thing of coupons. It was super embarrassing, especially for me, not ever having had to do that before. And my cards were both declined, and I had spent 2 hours, 7 months pregnant with number four, with three toddlers, shopping, and trying to
Oh,
maintain the
wow.
chaos that is that. And my husband's at work, and we both have degrees, and the cashier looks at me and says, "Don't you and your husband have jobs?" And I just was
Oh,
like, "Yeah, yeah, we
wow.
do actually," and it was a crushing moment, because
Wow.
that's you don't realize how damaging poverty is to people. It
Yeah.
really holds you back. And part of my story, of course, is coming out of poverty, and
Yeah.
it's really hard. And I'm so glad to, because I think if I hadn't experienced this, I would have thought, oh, they're just lazy. Oh, they just need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And I can tell you that sometimes when God has you on a path, there is no bootstrap you can pull up so hard to get you out of your situation.
Right.
But obviously, again, part of my story is that it was all for my benefit, for things that I could have never ever planned.
Right. Right. Wow. I mean, you said that you didn't plan for some of the kids, but you also didn't prevent some of the kids.
Well,
So,
we did. We were trying to prevent
oh,
actively. Yeah, yeah. We
oh,
just got
wow. Oh my
really fertile.
gosh.
But
Wow.
I always
Oh
like
my
to
gosh.
say we figured out what caused it. We got a TV in the bedroom. We've cut that flow of blessing off. We are good. We are done. It was
Eight is there's not going to be eight is
no.
what you're
Oh,
saying.
I would cry. I would cry. I saw a meme on Mother's Day that said, "I love my kids, but I would rather cut my lawn with scissors than have be pregnant again." And so I felt that deep in my soul. I love my babies, but we are done. We are good.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm ready for this new chapter of life. And so,
Yeah.
it
Wow.
yeah, so
What's the age range of your kids? I'm curious.
So my oldest, we have been married almost 21 years, and my oldest is 20,
Wow.
and my
Wow.
youngest is 6, just turned 6. So
Wow.
we've got we're like, they're all stair stepped up and
So you
down.
have
So
built-in babysitters at least, so that's kind of cool.
yeah, now, oh, I watched somebody
Yeah.
on Mother's Day pulling a stroller, pregnant with her husband, walking to the Randalls, and I was thinking, I would not trade you for the world. Like me and my husband sitting at Starbucks drinking our coffee. We got the kids are at home taking care of themselves. I'm like,
Right.
I will not do that again.
That's so
Uh,
funny.
yeah. So it's
So talk about where you started the journey out of poverty.
so
Because
my
I
husband,
it's a pretty cool story
yeah,
what you
it
just
really is. It's
did.
one that I get to talk about a lot, but
It's
it
amazing. Yeah.
so we had been dealing with poverty for a long time. My husband, we were making like 35,000 with 5 kids, and finally, inched our way up to about 50,000, I think. And I think that's like what they say is like kind of the breaking point, like where you can kind of live real life. And so we were at, I think, around 50, maybe 55,000. And so we were kind of being able to breathe and afford things again, still on, government assistance for the healthcare, which is a blessing because one of my daughters has a hearing aid and is deaf in both ears.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
decided to take a trip because my oldest daughter is fixing to leave for college, and she's, it's the last time we're going to be in our house as a family.
Yeah.
And so I said, we're going to take a trip to Hawaii. And I convinced my husband, or actually I said, can we go to Hawaii? And he was like, yes. And he never says, he's we're super careful with our money. So he never says yes. And so as soon as he said yes, I was like, okay, I'm going to go plan it. And I planned the most frugal vacation you possibly could have to Hawaii. But and the kids, we had a great time. It was pre-pandemic. It couldn't have been a better trip. But of course, I didn't
Yeah.
realize that when I was coming home and had $10,000 worth of credit card debt. And we have, we've been really blessed to just continue to try to stay out of credit card debt at that point. And we'd already dealt with a little bit, and so we were just like, no, we're going to live kind of Dave Ramsey style. Like we're gonna do this.
Yeah.
And even though doesn't really work sometimes when you're making little money, but
Yeah.
I just remember thinking, I'm so upset at myself. Like, why did I do this to myself? Like, was it worth it? And of course the kids are like, yes, it was worth it. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, you're not having to pay for it now. And so I
Right.
was crying, and I'm listening to Lauren Daigle, which is Rescue Me. And it's like, it's talking about how God's going to come rescue us all the time. And I was like, God, like, you got to come. Like, I can't get out of this. Like, my husband is at the time also is being pushed out of his job, and we can see the end of his job in sight, and he's trying to apply for new jobs. And I'm thinking, this
Mm.
is not going to bode well. Like, this is bad. And I started applying for jobs, and I was flown up to New York for a very prestigious job interview, and very excited. I thought, oh my gosh, this is finally it. Before this, I had been blogging, and I had been doing, speaking events and writing books, on my spare time. We homeschool our 7 kids, and I was, at night, I would homeschool during the day, and then at night I'd blog and perfect my Pinterest images and write books and online courses and stuff like that. And so when I got this interview, I was like, oh my goodness, this is the pinnacle of what I've been trying to do. And then right before Thanksgiving, November 2019, I got the call, you didn't get the job. And I was crushed. I was crushed, like how when my boyfriend in high school broke up with me, like, and I was crushed. Like, I mean, I physically felt it. Every time I saw an airplane fly in the sky, I was like, that could be me flying to New York on assignment. And I just was like, it hit so hard. My kids will actually remember, oh, that's the job that made you cry. Like, cause they remember it. Cause I was like, I said, I'm going to allow myself to cry and be upset, cry for a week and be upset for a month. And then I've got to figure out something else.
Yeah.
And during that time, we had been selling things on Facebook Marketplace and things that, because I was just trying to redo my house. I wanted to have the Pinterest house, tired of kids' toys everywhere, and got this idea one day when I passed a piece of furniture on the side of the road. Hey, I could pick that up and I could sell it on Facebook Marketplace. Like, I don't need it. And it's minutes before the trash truck is going to come. So it's just going to go to waste. So why don't I sell it on Facebook Marketplace? And what I didn't know is that was the moment that like just would set everything else in motion. And I had quit blogging. I was like, I'm never gonna speak. I'm never gonna write again. I'm done with this. I'm just gonna pick up stuff on the side of the road and sell it and pay off debt. Well, I did that over and over and over for 6 months, and in 6 months paid off $10,000 worth of debt just by picking up strollers, lamps, mirrors, broken dressers, and repairing them and or painting them. Just people throw out the most random things.
Yep.
And what I didn't know is I was perfectly situated because of what was going to happen with the pandemic to totally change my life. And so, during the pandemic, everybody was moving into Austin. Everybody had nothing to do. So they were redoing their houses. They were putting stuff on the curb. They might have been ordering stuff or redoing or repainting. But there was no, the Goodwills were closed. All the, there was just nowhere to put the stuff. So
Yeah.
it was putting out like all over the place. And so I'm just like porch pickup, contactless, like Venmo was starting to be a thing. And so it was just like hand over fist. I mean, I had cash fulls of money. I mean, now I'm going to the grocery store and I'm paying $250. I mean, I'm just paying in cash. And I'm like, there is nothing when you've been paying with your Lone Star card and then you put that cash on the table, there is nothing more powerful than that feeling of
Right.
I've done it. Like I'm earning my keep, in a way. And I, you know, that just kept motivating me. And at some point I came across a storage unit full of vintage furniture for $50 on Facebook. And the caveat was I had to go pick it up right away that day and clean out the thing.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. And I got some friends together and we went in and it was, lined my driveway, which is like 100-foot tandem driveway. And I mean, it was going to rain in 2 days. So, I mean, I had to sell. So I was selling, selling, selling. And that's really when I realized the power of vintage furniture, which really aligned with who I was already as a mom of 7, like waste not, want not. Like if it's macaroni for
Yeah.
breakfast and you didn't eat it, it's macaroni for lunch and then for dinner. And I,
Right.
leaned into selling vintage furniture
Yeah.
and decided, okay, this is where I'm going to go. And I'd been following people on Instagram. And so then I, started a vintage furniture company, named myself Curb Vulture because I had started picking up stuff on the side of the curb. And one crazy night I had too much caffeine and I grabbed the steering wheel and I said, I'm a vulture. I'm a vulture of the curbs. I'm a curb vulture. And so that's just where the name came out of. And so I just started a business and had no
Wow.
idea what I was doing, but decided, okay, I got to do this right. Like I have to be right with the government and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And my first e-commerce year in 2022 started really focusing on vintage, sending out a weekly email, doing all the marketing. And within our first e-commerce year, turned it into a 6-figure vintage furniture business that is,
Wow.
pivotal in the Austin community, the sustainable community here in Austin. And so,
Wow.
my message has been just sustainability and bringing, which is, and then, but it also has been a core message of mine is
Yeah.
making broken things new, because that's my life.
Mm.
Is I was broken. I was thrown out on the side of the road, not wanted, not desirable, and God found me and He cleaned me up
Mm.
and He made me new, and the value was always there of the piece of furniture on the side of the road of the person. But it's not until someone comes in and loves it that you can
Mm.
really see how you can see that everybody else can see the beauty and the value. And so, that message has just been at the core of my business. And I continue doing that and of course, sustainability is a beautiful thing and waste not, want not is a beautiful thing. But that's definitely what I've been doing. And
Wow.
through Curb Vulture, I was now financially free enough to pursue what more of a philanthropic aspect of it. And that's when I turned to pageantry. And so, I decided, I told God, I'm never going to speak again. I'm never going to write again. But there's a Bible verse that says, though I closed my mouth, but the word burned in my belly and I could not hold it in. And I started, okay, all right, I'm gonna start speaking. I'm going to start, I'm not just going to sell vintage. I'm going to do what I've been called to do, which is to bring light to the darkness and to set the captives free, because I've been given a great light and I've been set free.
Wow.
And so I want to do that for other people. And so I do a variety of things through pageantry. Some of it is dealing with online exploitation of children through Not on Our Watch, which is a global organization, which Elena Cordone is one of the board members. And, and then I'm working with some other organizations to get into schools and talk about my story and to share like how, especially with the fentanyl crisis, how dangerous these opioids are and that there is another option. And then just to give people hope that you don't have to, like, there's so much more out there that
Yeah.
is better than drugs and alcohol and living not in accordance with how God made you.
Wow. Such a powerful story. And you're a great storyteller. Imagine that.
Thank you. I
You're
like to
you're really
storytell. Definitely. Yeah.
you're really no, your story is absolute. And for anybody that is joining us late, I really encourage you to go back and watch this or listen to this from the very beginning, because Elaine is just, you're amazing. It's amazing what you've allowed God to do in your life, and how far you've allowed him to bring you. And I keep saying allowed because a lot of people don't allow it. It's there for everybody, but
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
everyone
The
accepts
heartache
that
and
gift.
everything that we go through, it can stunt us, or we can use it as a way to propel us into what we're called to do.
Amen. Amen. So let me ask you, gosh, I cannot believe we're at the end of this already. Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
And I ask every guest this question. I've been I'm a recovered alcoholic, coming up on 22 years sober by the grace of God. Um
Amazing.
and I think about the times, because I've been homeless several times as an adult, back in my drink, I call it my drinking days. And I think about, like, I've been homeless and I've been wealthy, and quite frankly, wealthy is way better. I don't
Yeah,
care
for sure.
what anybody says. Jesus talked more about money in the Bible than probably any other topic. I think that there are things that hold people back in life, and fear is the number one answer to this question, so you're not allowed to use fear. But what do you think stops people from having it all? And I'm talking about financial abundance, um true happiness and freedom to be, hey, let's go to Hawaii, let's go to
Yeah.
Dubai. Let's go. Let's have that kind of freedom in our lives. What do you think holds people back from having it all?
Yeah, I love this question because it goes into what we had talked about during or right after the conference.
Yeah.
Is it's people aren't focused on what they should be focused on, and that's really what holds it back. And I know that you are a big fan of the Secret and the Law of Attraction, but I think for me, I the Bible says that when you focus on God, when you focus on the kingdom of God, it says all things will be added to you.
Mm,
And when you align yourself with who God's created you to be, when you find your purpose, everything that is supposed to happen will happen. And then you realize, well, I'm focused on God and he's focused on me. I don't have to protect me. Then I don't have to provide for me. He's going to provide for me because he loves me more than the birds of the air, and he's counted the number of hairs on my head. And so he's going to take care of that. So when we focus on the kingdom of heaven, then all the things will be added into us. So I think it's just a wrong focus. There, and what you focus on is what will come to you. So the kingdom of heaven is reading a book right now with Miles Monroe. He's talking about we were created to dominate this world, and so when we
amen.
focus on the kingdom of heaven, it shows us and reminds us that we are who we are. and it's created in the image of God.
Amen, sister. I totally agree with that. As you already know, we had a long conversation about this one evening, but I think that again, I think that the miraculous thing that I see with you, and I see it as a miracle for me as well, is that a lot of people stay stuck in their story. And the story being, I was sexually abused, I was physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it is, abused. And they stay stuck in that movie playing over and over and over and over, and they do heroin and they do things that are unbecoming of a normal citizen on planet Earth, right? And we end up meeting our demise because of that story. And you've been able to, with the help of God and the grace, you've been able to change that story that you're replaying over and over and over up here. And it's a story of grace and love, and I love that about you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I just, I think the stubbornness is I refuse to be a statistic, and I'm going to be exactly who I want to be. And you have one life, and I'm going to live it to the fullest that I possibly can.
Amen. So tell me, Elaine, where can people follow you? Where can they find you? Do you have a website? What are all the good things that I can share with people right now?
Absolutely. If you are in the Austin area or you want something shipped nationwide for vintage furniture, you can find me at curbvulture.com or curbvulture on Instagram. Or if you would like speaking, podcasts, inspirational, whatever, talking about online exploitation and how to fight fentanyl, you can find me at elainemingus.com or Elaine Mingus Official on Instagram.
So is that, and can they get to Curb Vulture from ElaineMingus.com?
Yes, they can.
Okay. So there you go. I've got it scrolling across the bottom. Elaine Mingus, ElaineMingus.com. I'm spelling that for the people listening on the podcast. So um I love everything that you stand for and what you're doing. You're the first Mrs. Austin that I've ever met. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that is amazing what you've done with your life and how you turned it around. And I also think like you did the work too. Like it wasn't just God. God shows up and offers it to us, but he offers it to a lot of people that don't accept it. So
Yeah.
you're awesome. My wife just followed you on Instagram,
Thank
and
you.
Jill, if you're lucky, she'll follow you back.
I'm sure
Um,
I will. Yeah.
so Elaine, you're amazing. Everybody go follow Elaine. Go to ElaineMingus.com. Go over to Instagram and follow her at Elaine Mingus Official. And just watch what this woman does, because I see some spectacular things coming for you.
I am super thankful that you allowed me to come on. Hopefully, it touched people and inspired them to go live their best life.
Reach out to Elaine. She can help you get there. So, all right, I'm going to end the live stream. I want to say thank you very, very much from the bottom of my heart for coming on and sharing your heart and your journey today, Elaine.
You're welcome.
Thank you all. So if you didn't share this out, you can still redeem yourself and go ahead and share this out. And let's get a bunch of eyeballs on this interview, because Elaine is amazing, as you all can already see. So thanks again. Stay with me. I'll be right back. We'll see you all later. Have a great week. Have a great day today, and make it the best day of your life. We'll see you later. Bye-bye. Oh, is that the pageant thing?
The pageant wave. Bye.
I need to do that. We'll see y'all.